What if I told you that one of history's queens spent her nights sleeping beside her husband's rotting corpse? It sounds like a twisted horror story, a tale too ghastly to be true. But this is the real-life legend of Joanna of Castile, a Spanish queen so consumed by love and grief that she earned the nickname La Loca, the Mad Queen. Stay tuned, because this dark royal saga will shock you, captivate you, and leave you questioning whether Joanna was truly insane or the tragic victim of a cruel world. And believe me, the most chilling part of her story is yet to come. Joanna of Castile was no fairy tale princess. Born in 1479 to the famed Ferdinand and Isabella of Spain, she was intelligent, headstrong, and passionate. She wasn't even expected to rule. She had an older brother and sister destined for the throne. Yet fate dealt Joanna a strange hand. One by one, her siblings died, thrusting this young woman into the line of succession. Little did anyone know that this change of destiny would set the stage for one of history's most macabre love stories. After a politically arranged marriage, Joanna unexpectedly found true passion. At 16, she wed Philip of Burgundy, known as Philip the Handsome. When they first met, sparks flew. Their attraction was immediate and intense, igniting a fiery romance that had all of Europe talking. This was no cold political union. Joanna fell deeply in love with her golden-haired prince, and for a while, it seemed like a dream come true. So why is Joanna remembered as the mad rather than the happy? The answer lies in a toxic mix of love, betrayal, and tragedy. Joanna's tale is important because it shines a light on mental health in an age that didn't understand it, and on how a woman's emotions and grief could be twisted into a weapon against her. Her story matters to us today as a cautionary tale. It challenges us to be compassionate with those who suffer heartbreak or mental illness, and it warns how power-hungry people can label someone crazy to seize control. As we delve deeper, ask yourself, was Joanna truly mad or pushed to the brink by those around her? At first, Joanna's life in Flanders, Philip's homeland, was filled with passion. The young queen adored her husband. She was infatuated beyond reason. But Philip, despite his charming smile, was not the husband of her dreams. He was a notorious philanderer, a handsome prince with a wandering eye. Imagine Joanna's pain. Each time Philip flirted or strayed with another woman, her heart cracked a little more. She wasn't just jealous, she was tormented. Joanna's reactions to Philip's infidelity were wild and desperate. She was known to fly into fits of rage and despair whenever she suspected him of cheating. Short sentences, rapid thoughts. She screamed. She sobbed. She refused to eat or sleep. Her mood swung from love to fury in an instant, and people began to whisper. Was Joanna unstable? Or was she simply a woman pushed to emotional extremes by a cruel, unfaithful partner? In one notorious incident, Joanna's jealousy erupted into violence. After giving birth to one of their children in Spain, she hurried to reunite with Philip in Flanders, only to discover he had taken a new mistress in her absence. The sight of another woman in her place drove Joanna over the edge. In a frenzy, she grabbed a pair of scissors and lunged at her rival. She hacked off the woman's hair and even slashed her face in a desperate, furious outrage. It was a shocking display, downright scandalous for a queen. Was this madness, or the understandable agony of a betrayed wife? Either way, Philip was horrified by Joanna's behavior. Philip's response was cold and brutal. He beat Joanna and locked her away in her room as punishment for her outburst. Heartbroken and furious, Joanna fell into despair. She even staged a hunger strike, refusing to eat until Philip released her. This young royal couple's life had turned into a battlefield of passion, and Joanna was losing herself in the fight. Her own mother, Queen Isabella, grew alarmed. At one point, to prevent Joanna from recklessly chasing after Philip through a war-torn region, Isabella confined her troubled daughter in a castle for safekeeping. Imagine the shame and confusion Joanna must have felt. A princess and mother of children, locked up like a misbehaving child because of her crazed episodes. Yet through all the drama and darkness, one thing remained true: Joanna's obsessive love for Philip. No matter what he did, no matter how many tears she shed, or how furiously her heart pounded with jealousy, she could not stop loving him. This all-consuming passion would soon spiral beyond anyone's worst nightmares. The stage was set for tragedy, and tragedy came swiftly. In 1506, tragedy struck, and it struck hard. Philip the Handsome died suddenly, only 28 years old, after a brief mysterious illness. Some said it was typhoid fever. Others whispered darkly that perhaps Joanna's own father poisoned Philip to remove him from power. Whatever the cause, his death was catastrophic for Joanna's fragile psyche. One moment, her beloved was alive and laughing. The next, she was staring at his cold, lifeless body. Joanna was just 26, pregnant with their 6th child, and now the love of her life was gone forever. She snapped. There's no other way to describe it. When Philip drew his last breath, something in Joanna's mind shattered. Her grief exploded into obsession. She absolutely refused to part with Philip's corpse. While most widows of the time would submit to a funeral and burial within days, Joanna did the unthinkable. She ordered that her husband's embalmed body remain by her side. She clung to the coffin, weeping and unable to say goodbye. It was as if denying his burial could somehow deny his death. Imagine the scene: a dimly lit cathedral hall, midnight. Courtiers and monks stand by anxiously as the young queen drapes herself over a heavy coffin draped in velvet. Inside lies Philip's embalmed corpse. The air is thick with the sweet, sickly scent of incense, trying and failing to mask the odor of death. Joanna's eyes are red from tears, her face pale and determined. When officials urge her to allow a burial, she shakes her head violently, screaming that Philip is still her husband, even in death. The sound echoes off the stone walls. No one can reason with her. The queen's heart is broken, and her mind is sliding into darkness. For days, then weeks, Philip's coffin stayed put at Joanna's command. She kept it close, guarding it like a dragon hoarding treasure. Only after intense pressure did Joanna begrudgingly agree to a burial, but that peace was short-lived. Her father, King Ferdinand, insisted on laying Philip to rest in the royal vault, hoping perhaps that with Philip buried, Joanna might return to sanity. But Joanna's next act proved that sanity had slipped far from her grasp. Not long after the burial, Joanna did the unimaginable. She ordered Philip's coffin exhumed and brought back to her. In the dead of night, gravediggers unearthed the casket, and Joanna demanded it be opened. When the lid creaked back, there lay Philip's body, weeks into decomposition despite the embalming. What did Joanna do? She threw herself at her husband's corpse, sobbing in joy to see him again. In a chilling display of devotion, she kissed the feet of his cadaver, tears streaming down her face. This was no act of a rational mind. It was pure, heart-wrenching madness on display. From that moment on, Joanna of Castile lived every day and night accompanied by a corpse. Philip's coffin became a morbid fixture of her life. If Joanna traveled, the coffin traveled. If Joanna sat down to eat, she had Philip's casket brought to the dining room so he could join her for meals. And at night, in her bedchamber, the coffin was placed beside her bed so she could sleep next to her beloved husband's body. It's this horrifying habit that inspired the legends and gave Joanna her infamous nickname. People whispered that the queen was possessed, that she communed with the dead. Can you imagine it? A royal palace, where instead of banishing the corpse to a tomb, the queen keeps it by her side as the ultimate grotesque memento of lost love. But wait, it gets even more disturbing. Joanna's obsessive jealousy didn't die with Philip. In her deranged state, the queen was jealous even of other women near her husband's corpse. She feared that even in death, Philip's remains might attract some hypothetical female interest. She would only travel with the coffin at night, under the cover of darkness, to avoid any curious eyes. During the day, the entourage hid away, because Joanna could not bear the thought of other women even looking at Philip's casket. On one occasion, her procession stopped at a convent for shelter, but Joanna refused to carry the coffin inside. Why? Because the convent was inhabited by nuns, women, and the mad queen would not allow other women near her husband, even though he was dead. Think about that. Her mind was so consumed by possessive love that she guarded a corpse from nuns, as if her dead Philip might still be tempted by another. It's a dark, absurd image, showcasing how twisted Joanna's reality had become. Despite all this, some tiny part of Joanna knew how shocking her behavior was. Most of the time, she kept the coffin closed. She wasn't completely oblivious. The stench of decay would have been very real. So the casket remained shut as she carried it around Spain. But occasionally, when her longing overcame her, Joanna would pry open the lid. Perhaps by candlelight when she was alone, she would open that coffin to gaze upon Philip's face, even as it withered and decayed. One can only imagine the gruesome sight. The once handsome Philip, skin graying and sunken, lips drawn back, the smell of death heavy in the air, and Joanna, eyes wide with a mix of love and madness, stroking his cold cheek or murmuring to him softly. It's a vision straight out of a Gothic nightmare. For years, this morbid routine continued. The queen who slept with a corpse became a living legend. People were fascinated and horrified. The Spanish nobility and common folk alike traded rumors about their mad queen who held midnight conversations with her dead husband. The story spread across Europe. Spain's queen is insane with grief. Many were sympathetic. After all, she had suffered so much loss. But others saw opportunity in Joanna's broken state, especially Joanna's own family. Joanna's bizarre behavior gave her father, King Ferdinand, exactly the excuse he needed. Remember, upon Queen Isabella's death, Joanna was the rightful Queen of Castile. But the idea of a mentally unstable woman on the throne made the nobles uneasy. Ferdinand, who was hungry for power, stepped in, claiming Joanna was unfit to rule. He had already been spreading rumors that his daughter was hopelessly insane. Now, with her corpse-keeping antics, many believed him. In 1509, Ferdinand confined Joanna to a remote convent palace in Tordesillas. Effectively, he imprisoned his own daughter for her own good and took over rule of Castile as regent. In Tordesillas, Joanna's life sank into eerie stillness. The Grand Queen of Castile was now a captive, watched day and night by servants loyal to her father. And yes, Philip's coffin went with her into captivity. Even locked away from the world, Joanna refused to let her husband go. They placed the coffin in a nearby church on the grounds, where Joanna could visit it whenever she needed to be near him. She would spend hours at the church, in quiet darkness, sitting beside that coffin like a dutiful widow in eternal vigil. Sometimes she insisted it be brought into her own rooms. It sat by her at mealtimes. It rested by her bed at night. Year after year, this continued, the dead and the living bound together in a tragic loop. When King Ferdinand died in 1516, one might think Joanna's fortunes would change, but they only got worse. Her son, Charles, the future Emperor Charles V, took power, and he had little interest in freeing his mother. In fact, Charles ensured Joanna remained out of sight, out of mind, so he could rule unchallenged. Under Charles's orders, Joanna's confinement became even more harsh. She was kept in near complete isolation. Guards and caretakers, including her own daughter who lived with her, tightly controlled every aspect of her life. At times, they even boarded up her windows, leaving her in darkness for weeks on end, so she couldn't signal to outsiders or even feel the sun. Think about the cruelty. A woman already mentally fragile, locked in a stone fortress, denied sunlight and fresh air, with only a decomposing corpse and a handful of attendants for company. Joanna's once beautiful life had become a waking nightmare. Over the decades of her imprisonment, she sank further into melancholy and legend. She reportedly dressed in black mourning clothes every day for 49 years, never forgetting Philip until her own death. The corpse of Philip was eventually interred permanently, but even then, Joanna had it buried just outside her window, where she could imagine he was still close. This was love twisted into lunacy, grief weaponized into prison bars. So, was Joanna truly insane? Or was she the victim of a ruthless power play? It's a bit of both, and a story as complex as the human heart. Certainly, her behavior was disturbing and abnormal by any measure. The jealousy, the violent outbursts, the obsession with the corpse, these are not the actions of a healthy mind. Modern historians suspect Joanna may have suffered from mental illnesses like severe depression or schizophrenia. It's quite possible that the trauma she endured, the deaths of her loved ones, her husband's infidelity, childbirths, etc., pushed an already sensitive mind over the edge. In today's terms, we might say Joanna had a breakdown or was dealing with untreated mental health issues. She genuinely might have been mad in a clinical sense, deserving of care and compassion. But that's not the whole story. Joanna was also a pawn in a dynastic game of chess. Her father, and later her son, had clear motives to keep her labeled as mad. If Joanna was mentally sound, she was the rightful queen, and they would have to cede power to her, or, through her, to her children. By insisting she was insane, they justified stripping her of authority and keeping her locked away. In an era dominated by men hungry for control, a strong-willed queen was a threat, and calling her crazy was the easiest way to remove that threat. How convenient for Ferdinand and Charles that the queen's grief made her appear exactly how they needed her to: unstable and incapable. We should also question the sensational rumors. Over the centuries, storytellers have embellished Joanna's tale. Was she really sleeping in the same bed as the corpse, or just keeping it in her room? Did she truly kiss its feet and talk to it daily? Or are these the kind of lurid details that get exaggerated over time? Some records indicate that while Joanna kept Philip's coffin nearby, she wasn't conversing with it as if he were alive. She was just desperately holding on to the last piece of the man she loved. In her way, perhaps she was trying to delay the inevitable duty of ruling by using her mourning as an excuse. Or perhaps she felt safer as a widow in mourning than as a queen on the throne vulnerable to remarriage or political attacks. We can't know for sure because history often blurs the line between fact and legend. What we do know is that Joanna of Castile's life is one of history's great tragedies. She became a legend of madness, but behind that legend was a real woman who lived through unimaginable emotional pain. She was isolated, manipulated, and ultimately forgotten by those who should have cared for her. Her love for Philip, whether seen as romantic devotion or unhealthy obsession, was used to paint her as unfit to rule. In the end, Joanna died in 1555, after nearly half a century imprisoned, never having truly ruled in her own name. She outlived all the players who betrayed her, passing away quietly in the same fortress that had been her cage. So, was she a madwoman? Or a victim of a cruel era and crueler family? Perhaps she was both. Joanna's story reminds us that real people can become prisoners of both their own minds and the schemes of others. It's a chilling example of how a narrative can be crafted. Was she crazy because she really was, or because it was convenient to call her so? Even today, we can learn from Joanna's fate, to be wary of labels that diminish people's humanity, and to have empathy for those who suffer mental anguish. After all, calling someone mad might just be a way to avoid understanding their pain. Joanna of Castile's life was a dark and twisted saga of love turned to obsession and power turned to cruelty. From a passionate princess to a broken queen, her story has all the elements of a nightmare. A once beautiful romance that descended into violence, a death that sparked unhinged devotion, and a lifetime of loneliness locked away by those she should have been able to trust. The key takeaway from Joanna's story is a sobering one. Unchecked grief and obsession can destroy a person, and sometimes the people labeled mad by history are the ones who were betrayed and broken by others. Yet, her legacy lives on as a poignant lesson. We are drawn to her story because it forces us to confront the thin line between devotion and delirium, between love and lunacy. It urges us to ask tough questions about how we treat people, especially women, who don't conform to what society expects. Joanna's tale is a reminder that truth can be stranger and darker than fiction, and that empathy and understanding are essential when we look back at historical figures notorious for their madness. Thank you for accompanying us through this eerie journey into the past. If this shocking story kept you glued to your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps us out. Comment below. What do you think? Was Joanna truly mad, or more a victim of circumstance? We'd love to hear your take on it. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more captivating and chilling history stories. We have plenty of unbelievable tales just like this one. So subscribe and join our community of history lovers. Lastly, if you're hungry for another mind-blowing historical saga, be sure to watch our next video. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, stay curious and stay compassionate.